Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Stick Together. And joining me today is, I cannot believe this, Martin. I was trying to figure out how long we've known each other, and we would have met each other in the year 1990. We've known each other for over 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a very, very good friend of mine, the captain of a hockey team that I hold really close to my heart in the times that I played on the Isle of Wight, the one and the only Martin Jeneway. Martin, thank you so much for joining me, buddy. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. I didn't realise it was that long. I remember it being my first daughter was born in '95, and I remember skating around the ice with her in my arms and almost dropping her. And you noticed, and you went, "You almost dropped her, didn't you, Ryan?" And I kind of that's still in my heart now. I remember just general skating after a game. I was like,
Yeah.
I actually did. I kind of like, I think I can do it. So yeah, that was my
They,
first.
they were good times, Martin. We're going to get into them. The format of this podcast is that we're going to break it down into three periods. First period is we're going to talk about how you fell in love with the game. Second period, we'll get into all that nice, juicy stuff and time on the Isle of Wight. And then the third period, we're going to talk about our relationship now and life after hockey. And then if we have time, we'll head into a bit of overtime. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. And I know you were not a centerman. I know you didn't take draws, but we're going to drop the puck and start the first period. But Martin, I'm knowing you for a long time. I met you probably, I think the first time we would have skated together, the island wouldn't have opened up. Probably would have been a little bit of practice stuff in Gosport.
That's right.
Getting people together with Mark Wallace and his brother and I think Matt Cousins. I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
Cousin.
Matt Painter. Ivor Ambridge, just some guy, man, like the crew. So yeah, skating on Gosport, and then eventually, you becoming the captain of the Wightlink Raiders, and we can get into all of that. But how does a guy like you, growing up on the south coast of England, how did you get introduced to hockey?
Real interesting. I've thought about this quite a lot, and it's quite a story, and it's just a story that I guess everyone would hear. It's the same sort of thing. It was 6 weeks holiday. I had 6 weeks holiday in the summer for school. I was under my mum's feet. I was getting away. My mates were doing whatever else they were doing. We normally out on our bikes all the time, up the common, all around Southampton, just cycling. I was getting under her feet. She went, "Oh, just go swimming, go skating. Here's a couple of pounds. Just do something." I went skating. I fell in love with it then and there. And it's really weird. I think a few of us have spoken about it. I'm going to mention it as well. I don't know what it is, but even the smell of the place takes me back, right? And I think I've heard of other people say it, but not many people say it. I think that people think we're weird when you say that. I don't know what the smell is, but you walk in there and it's the pneumonia from the plant. It's the rubber mats that have always been wet. It's just got a smell and it's so distinctive, and you still walk in there, and I think smells are like memories. They take you back to what you first remember, and it's kind of like, whoa. So I went in there and I skated on higher skates, and I enjoyed it, and I met some people there, met some friends from school, and I skated and I skated and I absolutely loved it. Wanted to go back the next session, Then my mum had figure skates from my older sister, who's 7 years older than me. She said, "There you go, you can have them." I'm like, "They're white. I'm not going to skate on those." So she dyed them black. So I know I was mischievous as you like. So she dyed them black. So I went skating on those, and I skated on figure skate for probably 8, 10 months, and I just
With toe picks?
with toe picks. Nightmare. So yeah, but let me say the whole story. Doing that, I learned to skate on with toe picks. I then badgered and badgered and badgered my parents for skates, and eventually I got some Bauer Chicago's. They were red, blue, white. They were just fantastic skates. My brother-in-law watched me skate with my sister. They used to go skating, and he went, "Oh, he's not going to be able to skate on hockey skates. He uses toe picks too much. He's not going to be able to skate on hockey skates." But I was like, "I want them. I want them. I want them." I put about £5 towards them. I think my mum and dad put about £13 towards them, and that was it. £18. I had a pair of skates. Couldn't skate on them. Got them on. Couldn't skate on them. I was like, "God, this is awful. Don't know what's going on." Probably 2 sessions later, you couldn't take them off my feet. I could skate on them perfectly. And I was short, and I was small, and I was nippy, and I was just I just love skating in general sessions. I met one of the stewards up there had a son called Kev Ray, and his mum owned the skate shop, so she would sell skates and they would sharpen skates. He was a steward, the dad was a steward, and the son was always there. Kev Ray and myself skated around that rink in every session like you wouldn't believe, following each other. Literally close coordination, following each other. I'd follow him more than he'd follow me, and we just learned to do so much, backwards, forwards, just incredible. That was it. That was my introduction to it. So that was skating. And then someone said, "That guy's a good skater. He should go and play hockey." And someone came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to play in the hockey team?" I'm like, "Oh, thought about that. Tell me more." "Well, there's training on Saturday mornings at 6 o'clock here, 6 till 7:30. The senior team train you. Come along." And I'm probably 10 or 11 years old, like, and I'm being allowed to go to the ice rink on my own now, and I can walk back from the ice rink, or I'd actually have the 2 pence to catch the bus back, but I'd normally spend that on sweets and whatever else, on the fruit machine and whatever else, and I'd walk home and I'd walk to the rink, or sometimes I'd see someone passing me who was going to the rink, and they'd let me jump in, but there were some cuts to get through, some back alleys to get there, so I would walk there, and I started training. My sister took me to the first training session, 6 o'clock in the morning. My parents didn't get involved. My dad was running a fruit and veg shop, running a big business. My mum was selling, I don't know, just delivering Meals on Wheels to people. She always had a part-time job. They were both working, both trying to buy more houses and buy more houses. They kept buying houses in Southampton and never selling them. So we'd move from one house, and the old house would just be rented out, and then we'd buy a bigger house. And I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but they were busy all the time. So they never got involved in my hockey. My sister took me for the first time. The guy said, Tony Highmore, rest his soul, he's just passed away probably 4 years ago now. He said to me, "Right, okay, go and join that queue over there." And I had gloves by then. Someone had given me some gloves. I had a helmet, and I went to walk around the rink. And he went, "No, skate across." So I had to skate across all the people that were going up and down doing lines, so we between them to join the furthest line. And he said to my sister, "Whoa, he can skate," which I was like, that was impressive straight away. Could I handle a puck? I got in the end queue, and with a puck, completely different animal. Up the rink, down the rink, back around, yeah, pass it to the next guy. Couldn't do any of it, but absolutely loved it. From that moment, the people, the attitude, the camaraderie, the joking, the no nonsense from the senior team. Simon Coleman, Simon Davison at the time, was messing around. Tony Highmore just fired pucks at him, and like he was jumping out the way of these pucks at the barrier, going, "Don't mess around on my training session." Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. It's like I'm at home. For me, that was it. That was my introduction.
Beautiful introduction. I can just imagine it. And I know people are probably going to listen. Well, no, people, this is a hockey playing podcast. This is for hockey players. Are all going to recognize the fact that we talk about the smell of the rink. The first smells that we walked into when we were either watching a game or when we started going skating. And I know, for my experience with British hockey players is that they got involved in hockey through session skating. And session skating is the disco sessions they had, the public skating sessions they had, all the fun things that you guys used to do, the barrel rolling and the edge
Yeah,
stuff. And
yeah.
I mean, it
Speed
like no
skating. Yeah,
the
speed
speed
skating.
skating,
Yeah,
and even guys like we'll talk about probably guys like Matt Brennan on the Isle of Wight, who just became this great little session skater, and then eventually he made a hockey team. At quite an older age.
yeah.
And I think that we just don't put enough. Well, I suppose focus on how guys became really good skaters, which was just going out there and having a blast. And then of course there was the challenge of what would happen when you put a stick in their hands,
Yeah.
which it's a whole different ball game. But I've always noted, British guys really really good skaters.
Yeah, and for that reason, then Peter on his podcast said about them in Durham skating around with the sticks in the session. I'm like, oh my god, that would have been like for me, that would have been like heaven, heaven, heaven to be able
Mm.
to have done that. But I literally was once I became probably 14, 15, school was forgotten about. I literally went to the ice rink Monday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, Saturday. Oh no, sorry.
It's okay. I'll just
Sorry.
talk a little second here because I want to reiterate the idea of like going to the rink with guys, doing some public skating, becoming good sessions. But also at the beginning of this, Martin, I rattled off a bunch of names, guys like Ivor Ambridge and the Wallace brothers and Mike Smith. And, I think about Mike Smith and I think about his dad, bless him, who's no longer with us.
Mhm. Yep,
Gordon, yeah, Gordon, and
yep,
who is our gate guy at the island for so long, and like they're really literally like relationships and bonds that have been around for a lifetime. In Southampton, the Southampton Vikings in the '80s, where you started to play, they were good hockey down there, produced a lot of great hockey players. And for you to be part of that, those memories, like what made you go from sessions, like just get those sessions to I actually want to get involved and start playing some organized hockey, and who were some of your teammates then?
it was just a natural progression, really. And it was so you were training Saturday mornings. You were literally getting on the bus on your own. The number two bus stopped just around the corner from me. I'd get on the bus on my own with all of my kit on, apart from my skates. The bus would be full of postmen, and that was the only people on the bus. And they'd, oh, hello, mate, how you doing? And they talk to you, and you just drive on the bus and get to the bus. And they wouldn't drop you off at the bus stop, but they drop you off a little bit further up the road. I know I'm going back a bit. Sorry, Nick. Just exactly where the cut was, where you could cut through and you could get straight to the ice rink. So I did that for years on my own. And then the Wallaces lived very close to me. Mark and Darren Wallace lived very close to me. So we'd meet at the same bus stop. And then we start firing pucks against the wall while we're waiting for the bus to turn up at 5 o'clock in the morning. The bus came at 11 minutes past 5. So we'd be firing, and then the people in the windows would be, "God, that noise out down there!" And it's like we're almost playing street hockey at 5 in the morning. It's absolutely ridiculous. We didn't think about it. We didn't get hit the fence or someone screaming, but those bus shelters were made of corrugated metal. It's like they
Mm.
make such a rattle. So that was my first introduction. And sorry, your question was what the people that the,
Yeah,
the
how you went from shooting pucks on a wall to the rink to actually like when people are saying, okay, this is now what under 10s, under 12s, under 13s, and so like let's get you into an organized team, and you put the first time you put a jersey on, and
right.
who were some of your teammates?
Well, I can tell you all of the teammates, and what literally would happen was we would have a training session, which would then switch into a game session. So at 6 in the morning, we would play games at that time of day, just for the juniors. And the first time I remember this vividly, shocking it is as it is. Brighton, who didn't have a rink, Rob Rescall and those guys would come down from Brighton and they'd play us then at 6 in the morning. I think I've never cried as much once when I overslept and I missed a game. Honestly, at 6 in the morning, I'm so excited the day before. My kit is laid out, I've got everything going on, couldn't sleep. And of course, then you oversleep because you couldn't sleep. And I went down to the rink at third period, walked or ran down there and didn't make it. And, just watched the game. And then, where were you? I'm not overslept, And I think it was Dave Churchill, who was Terry Churchill's father, was like looking after us then. And it's kind of like, it happens. So that was our first initial. My next sort of after that, it was organised team where you actually got to put on the Vikings t-shirt or the junior Vikings t-shirt or shirt, and we would then go up to Richmond, the old Richmond Rink, which was right by the river, and then see the Nicky Iandolis and the Jimmy Johnsons, and we play against those guys. And Nicky Iandoli was about 2 foot tall, but my God, they could skate. They were so good. Jim Johnson, Mark Salisbury, those guys, and we played against them. Obviously, arch enemies, didn't know who they were at the time, and then as years go on, we played together in all sorts of different teams, but that's obviously for the next period. But that was my first introduction, and the guys I was playing with. Now, the Ivor Amages, the Matt Painters, the Matt Causens. Matt Causen was from Bournemouth, but the Ivors and the Matt Painters and the Wallaces were slightly younger than me. So there was the Tony Highmores, the Pete Murrays, and the older guys, the Colin Bennetts, and those guys were playing hockey. The next level down was the Nicky Drews, the Mark Lewis, the Mark Ashtons, those guys, Ian Cooper. They were not the Ian Cooper from this. We had the Ian Cooper in Southampton as well. Those guys were intermediate, and they were sort of just getting into the team. Myself, Robert Waddell, Lee Wow was slightly younger. Lee made it. Lee lives in Boston now. I need to go and see him.
I know Lee well played for us.
Oh, you know Lee?
I remember Lee. Yeah.
Well,
I love that. Yeah.
Lee and I walked to the ice rink together because we lived in the same. I used to walk past his house, knock on his door, meet his mum. He's coming, and then we walk to the ice rink together. And then we walk home late on Saturday night and listen to the. Who did we listen to? The Jam. Lee always wanted to listen to the Jam. So,
Lee's a funny guy. Funny,
laugh, funny.
Lee, he was just funny. Like Lee, he just had this really dry sense of humor. I don't know why I'm talking about like he's still around, guys. But and I have to pause your first period here a little bit because like there's those urban myth stories that people tell. And I remember Lee, he had me and Dan Sweeney in the office and he was telling us this story. And I swear it must not, I don't think it's true, but he was telling us a story that it was in Boston, I think, and I think his wife was there. They were staying at his in-laws' place, and he tells this story of like him going upstairs to have a Sherman, right? And he says that he was laying on the a cup of tea. Is it true? Is it true? So he's laying on the bed, right? And he's sorting himself out, and he's just got some headphones on. So it would have been a Sony Walkman at the time. And he finishes, and there's a cup of tea next to the bed. And now, please tell me that's true, because I've heard it as an urban myth story as well. But is it true?
How can I tell it's true if I wasn't actually in the bedroom delivering the tea? How can I tell you? But I have heard the exact same story from the exact same person. He said, literally, I was there doing what I was doing. He said, earphones on, listening to a bit of that. He said, the next thing I worked, he said, I sort of went, finished that. Where's the paper? How the fuck did that whole cup of tea get there? He said, I then had to go downstairs and meet the mother-in-law again. She's like, all right, you put your cup of tea. Like, and that's a story that he did tell me. How factual that is.
I remember like me and Dan like sitting in the office on the island, and he told me this story straight as a dice, and like me and Dan are just like unbelievably like creasing over. But it was only a few years later I heard it as an urban, like one of those stories, and I was like, oh man, please tell me that Lee wasn't winding us up, because we're two dumb Canadians, right? And I thought maybe he was winding us up, but
it might have been one of those stories that he adopted and he heard, and he said it from a very young age, and he then adopted him, put himself into that situation. He was a good storyteller. He was an amazing football player, soccer player. He was really good football player. He played for the school team, so he was always one of those sporty guys,
Yeah. So, I'm sorry to hijack your first period. We still got a couple of minutes left about like how you fell in love with the game, and
Well,
And I
so
guess it,
I
it
had those guys. I had the Adams boys, the Darren and Jamie Adams, and then Jason Adams, who became a good goalie. I've got pictures of people, and I can name all the pictures and all the teams. And how do you describe how you fell in love with hockey? It's like I fell in love with skating. I then skated literally all the time. I'd skate Saturday lunchtimes, and I got in free so that I could put the nets up for the senior game. So then I was always watching the senior games every week. As soon as the game was over, the nets came down, the poles came out, the general session went on, and then I was allowed on that as well, free, because I'd put the nets up and down. So I was watching the senior teams. I was smelling the senior teams. I was going in the changing rooms. I was doing all of that sort of stuff. And I kind of just, I don't know. How do you describe it? How do you describe playing with solly old barons and being beaten so badly? And I, I, I don't know. I don't know how you describe it, but it was a natural progression.
yeah. And when did you know like that you could actually like because I know you ended up your job in aerospace engineering and stuff like or you were working for what was the company you worked for where you and Ivor were cutting our visors? What was that company?
GE Aerospace, yeah, British
Uh,
Aerospace, Aerospace
British Aerospace.
Hamilton.
You made it, you had a life in Southampton, and then all of a sudden, like, when did you think, oh, I can start playing senior hockey here and actually, eventually wearing a captaincy on a team? When did you think, okay, I'm actually going to keep at this?
It's really weird, but like jobs, if you stay in the same building that you're in, or you start a job as an apprentice, they're always going to treat you like an apprentice because you're looked at as an apprentice from the people that are looking up. So for the first team, it was really interesting. When I went up there, there was a different team between the juniors and the senior team called the Knights. So I played for the Knights for quite a long time. And I said to you, I was quite small, so I was quite a short, stocky, um, squat player. And I had quite a good style of skating then, back in the day. I then grew at 15 to 16, probably 2 foot over 12-week period, I reckon. And I grew really quick. My mum was literally letting trousers down and buying trousers for me like you wouldn't believe. It messed me up completely from picking up a glass and knocking it over from my skating. My skating became gangly, and I think it still is now. It's still a bit of a weird style, but it kind of that's that's why my styles changed from skating like a real decent skater to a real what did Gary Steffen call me? A Martian. I was all arms and legs, but
Listen, it's a perfect time to end the first period. Me and Sweeney used to call you Crazy Legs.
there you go.
There you go.
Thank
You were fun to watch, buddy. Let's end the first period. And what we're gonna do, like Martin, I ask everybody, and I actually, you're my first teammate that I've had on here. We were a teammate for a few years. We were the first teammate, so I know that changing room on the Isle of Wight, and I used to know what guys were doing in between intermissions and stuff like that. But may as well. What was you were a guy that had a lot of. You got dressed funny. You had some little quirks. But what were your intermission routine? What would you get up to?
I put my skates on first before my shorts. I know that's a bit strange, and few people do it. There's a few people I've seen do it, but it's kind of now I do it, which I'm still playing. A lot of the guys can't bend over their belly, so they're now trying to do what I do. So kind of like it's quite a good thing. What did I do in the intermission? So in it's really interesting because I was never in any group, so to speak. So the Wallaces and the Ivors would disappear around the back and have a cigarette, and Dan would join them occasionally, but never get involved in it because you couldn't see him smoking, but he'd kind of go and have a couple of drags and then disappear, and then drop his lighter on the ice, right? Because he tucked it in his shorts. Do you remember that?
But
What's that?
Dad
What's a
didn't
lighter?
smoke. Oh, Dad didn't smoke.
And then smoke. He's got a lighter inside his shorts because he's had a cigarette and a half, didn't you? In the period. I kind of cruise between different groups of people. I'd like to have a cup of coffee, bizarrely, but there's so many idiosyncrasies with players about putting their left skate on first, they're doing their kit up properly. Even within the periods, it's like what you did before the game, what food you ate. My wife would say that I sat in the afternoon, she wouldn't talk to me at all because I became angry. And it was like almost a build up to the game. And I guess now I still do a little bit of that. It's weird, but you do. Um, but between the periods, Isle of Wight wise, I took my captaincy, I thought, quite seriously by saying to everyone, "Hey, what you doing? You all right? Are you up for this? You doing well? You all right? How's that ankle? I saw you take that puck." Just making sure each different group from your select group of you, Dan, Ivor, Dave Wilson, you guys chatting in the corner, just checking in on you guys, to checking in that Matt Brennan's not messing around and not doing anything crazy, and then Steve Slater coming along later and him also having that same attitude, and then making sure that Mark Wallace hadn't upset anyone with saying something out of order, and then making sure that Matt and Stuart were okay and still talking to each other, and just kind of making sure that everyone had their bonds and everyone was up together, and just walked between the groups, tying up my skates, relaced the skates, retaped my legs, make sure I got my chewing gum. I'm ready to go.
We're going to drop the puck now and get to your career. I suppose how you went from, what was it, the Knights, up to the Vikings, started playing senior hockey, and then eventually let's talk about how you made that little trip across the Solent to the Isle of Wight. But when did you go into senior hockey, like, and how did that look for you, and yeah, how did you end up on the Isle of Wight?
Really interesting because I don't know how you transition from the Knights to the juniors to the Knights. Okay, that was a natural transition. You became of age. You're not a junior anymore. You're 17 or whatever the age was at the time. And sometimes it would change between the summer. You go, okay, they've now put a new rule in, which means now the 17-year-olds are now seniors and they can't play for the juniors anymore. You're like, shit, what do I do? And there's sometimes people are left in that twilight zone and they're not good enough really to go up, but they aren't, and their age is against them, so they're stuck. And some people hung up their skates, and I didn't. I guess I just went, I'm going to try and play for the second team. I'm going to play for the second team. I'm going to play anywhere. So I did, and I then probably got a call up from the first team. I was a little later than other guys again because the crazy legs, as you call me, because the way I skated, because I was a little bit roughy tufty. I was misunderstood. I call it misunderstood. That's what I was. Not roughly toughy, but misunderstood. Um, I got the call up from the first team. Do you want to play one game? And then, you know, someone, one of the older guys goes, and before you know it, we're playing a sponsorship game for 12 hours on the ice. Totally, Mecca had given us the rink for a sponsorship for, I think, the cancer or something. So we did that. That was amazing. You would have thought that everyone would have wanted to get off the ice. Still, after 12 hours, there was people changing shift, and really, there was always someone ready to go. That brought us on quite a lot. It's quite surprising, the 12-hour training session, because that's really what it was. But you got good and got more confident and got better with your hands, you got better with your shots, and got better to know who the other players were and who you were going to pass to and who's going to mess up and who's not going to mess up. Just a natural transition, Dan. Dan.
Nick.
Nick, sorry.
Okay.
I'm thinking about Dan Smith. I'm thinking about Nick. So that's kind of the natural transition to the first team. I'm sort of thinking, looking to the right, looking to my left there, thinking out loud. Then the ice rink in Southampton closed. So over a summer, all the councillors are off. Something's happened. Mecca have bought the ice rink off of Top Rank. Mecca now own the rink, and they just closed it down like that. It was just gone. There was no one to push back or anything like that. It was like, shit, the rink's closed. No, it's just a rumor. It's not closed. They're just taking the seats out. They're bringing new seats back. No, it's closed. It's gone. And it was like, for me, Southampton ice rink, I say, I was still general session 4 times, 5 times a week, still playing hockey, still travelling everywhere. What are we going to do? and that team just dissolved, just disappeared on us overnight. Literally, I think it was 1987. I might be correct. It might be. I got married in 1987. Brett Kelleher was there as an import. When I came back from my honeymoon, Brett was the import. He just turned up. That was October. So that's probably when it was. Perhaps it was after that, and perhaps it was a couple of years. I'm not sure. He was there for a while. Got good friends with him. The ice rink closed, and my life was over. Didn't know what to do with myself. I was like cutting off both my arms, not just one arm. And I think I got a call from Gary Steph, and there was people telling me that other people were doing stuff. I either said, "Oh, someone's got a call from here. Gosport are going to open a rink, and something's going to happen here." And Basingstoke were talking about opening a rink. And what are we going to do? My life was over. Honestly, it was like stealing my heart. It's shocking. Jamie Adams said that he's going to. I phoned him up on our phone in the hallway. Phoned him up. Said, "Yeah, I'm going to Slough." I'm like, okay, so I sort of hinted at them calling me, and Gary called me up and said, "You can come play for us if you want. How much would it cost you to come up to Slough?" Said, 3 times a week. That's got to be a £10 a journey, isn't it? Oh, £30. Over here now. He went, "Yeah, okay, and I'll give you a bit more than that." And it kind of like, I went up and played for Slough for a year. That was probably one of my best experiences, one of my funnest experiences, one of seeing some proper characters and some proper fun.
Was that like with this like Stefan and was Charlie Colin in that and
Charlie
like
Colin was there.
Richard
Now,
Beaupre
Charlie
and
Colin already. So Charlie Colin used to come down to Southampton to do the hockey school in Southampton over the summer. I never went to the hockey school, but by then my parents owned a guest house, so a little hotel. Charlie would stay with us for free.
So you had some legend hockey players in Slough then. Like that was a stacked team.
Paul Ferguson was a coach.
Mm-hmm.
We had Gary Stephan, Charlie Coland, Richard Beaupre. God, I don't know who the other import was. Oh, that's shocking. Yeah. I don't know.
So as he just scoots off, I don't know if we're actually going to pause or we're just going to keep going. Ben's laughing in the background. I'm a pretty good talker, so we're not going to pause. Wow, look at that. Paul Ferguson, Gary Stephan, Richard Beaupre,
and me.
And you.
We went, I got a call saying, "We're going to do some barrel racing. We're going to do some barrel pushing." There's a barrel there. And we had to do it for a sponsorship type thing.
It looks more like an album cover.
Yeah, there you go. Ben, you're supposed to be silent in the corner. Do you mind? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Like an 80s album cover. But so, yeah,
I said 70s,
great
to be
guys,
honest.
great characters. Moose was there and still alive. Brian Biddulph was there. Oh, just Leggett was there. Just all sorts of amazing players. So Jamie, myself would drive up together. And then eventually Jason would come up with us as well. Jason, Jamie's brother, was a goalie. And he became the second goalie behind Charlie. He was only small, but he was such a good goalie, so nimble. So us three used to drive up to Slough. And I did that. I don't know if I did it for 2 seasons or 1 season. I can't remember. It might have been I think it was about a season and a half. I still got the green shirt. Still wear the green shirt now. So still got it. Got little rips in it and all sorts of stuff. Some slashes but some great times. But we walked in the changing room and couldn't believe that they had their own stalls and they had their own. It's like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is so professional. Oh, what stick do you want? Mine? What? Here's some tape. Oh, here's some gloves. Whoa, what is going on here? What, you're going to give me gear? I've been buying gear for the whole of my life. And now I'm getting gear. Oh, what skates do you want? Okay. Wow, this is incredible.
I mean, that's not when you got your plastic wellies.
No, I've still got those now. But
yeah.
No, Jets actually bought that jersey back last year.
Did they really?
They had the green jersey was a retro jersey that they wore in the cup.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I'll get you a picture of it.
I'll go and get mine out of the garage if you pause. No, sorry, what was the question, Nick?
We were talking about Slough.
Okay, so plastic skates. No, I don't think I got them then. I think I got
Okay.
some. I think I got some graphs or something like that. Because I did venture away from those occasionally
Yeah.
because there was no street cred in those up there, was there? Yeah, and you couldn't if you're
Ever.
in London with those boys, with the Gary Bryans and the bloody
Yeah.
those. Yeah, you
Well,
actually.
you call Tony Han and David Longstaff would have been the guys that would have been wearing plastic skates at the longest. So,
No,
but let's go from Slough. What happens at Slough, and where do you move on from there?
so I went from there. I went to Basingstoke. Mark Ashton, who I knew from Southampton, who was a good defenceman, pretty solid defenceman, became a coach in Basingstoke. He gave me the call and said, "Hey, do you want to come and play for Basingstoke rather than playing for Slough?" I'm like, and then you're talking money, and you're going, "Okay, well, how much more are you going to get for that?" And it's actually less journey, and actually, half the guys from Southampton who were either younger than me or older than me all moved to Basingstoke. I'm like, yeah, that sounds more like home from home. So I went and played there for probably 2 or 3 seasons. Someone will correct me. I don't know. Just I'm not a statistic man. Really loved it there. Really had a good time. Tried to tell them that Beavers shouldn't be called the Beavers. They should be called something else. But we went on. So played with Mark, Don Uchin, um, Tim Salmon. Yeah, Conway was there for a bit as well.
Um,
Wasn't he? Unbelievable players. And we didn't do very well in the league, but we snuck into the playoffs by the skin of our teeth. I think someone else had illegally played a player, and that meant that they lost a point, which meant we just snuck in on fifth position or sixth position or whatever it might have been to play in the playoffs to go up a league. And Don Uchin came to us and said, "We've got a different strategy. I know you're a defenceman, Martin, but we've got a different strategy for the playoffs, and we want to try it with you and Darren. We're going to try it in training. We want you to mark the best player on the opposite team. We don't give a shit where the puck goes. We don't want you touching the puck. We just don't want that import touching the puck or that best player touching the puck." So in training, Darren and myself half shifted marking Don Uchin or marking Tim Salmon and just got used to staying with them. The puck would go between my legs sometimes, and I wouldn't allow. I couldn't touch it. As long as I was making sure that he wasn't getting near the goal, I was pushing him away. I was doing whatever I was doing through the playoffs. That was my job, just to get people off their game. We played against who was it? Bracknell Bees. Was it Fridging? I think it was Fridging. I lined up next to him on the centre circle, or there he goes, my face off, or to the right wing or left wing or wherever he was, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing up there?" Sort of thing. I said, yeah, give him some shit straight away. I thought, I'm not even gonna. The game's here. I'm not gonna get involved in communicating with you and being a nice guy to you. I followed him around the rink everywhere. We won the game. He scored probably one goal, and he was used to scoring 6 goals. Scored 1 goal. Darren and myself literally half shifted him. After a minute, I was burnt out. Darren jumped on, other way around. We literally, that's all our job was. So the first game in the playoffs, we won. We did that through the whole of the playoffs, and we won, I think, 5 out of the 6 games by doing that. The only game we didn't win was really weird. It's really weird. I don't normally read the program before a game. I don't normally get psyched out by anything. We played Romford at home in Basingstoke, and we kicked their ass because, again, we did the same format. They wrote in their program, "Oh, we're not going to get those dirty tactics that Jeneway's going to be doing this and marking our import. That's not going to happen to us." It kind of got in my head a little bit, but they also did something different themselves. So it's a lot about, we're talking head trauma later on, but we're kind of talking, the game is definitely played in the head. And it's the first time that I really, really respected that, because reading the program and what they were going to do to me put me off my game slightly. However, and also they then tried to man mark me. So I was marking whoever their best player was. Then I had Tari Swahari chasing me around the rink, literally cross-checking me, Albert, and me giving me shit. doing whatever, wherever I was, he was, just trying to prevent me from marking that input. They won that game. But, however, we won the playoffs, and we then went up a league. So,
Nice.
kind of, I feel, and that was my physical doing, but that was the Don Uchin and Mark Ashton cleverness of how we're going to win this and how we're going to change things. I think Basingstoke supporters, if I still see them now, this long after, will still say, "I remember those times, Martin. I remember those times. I remember when you chased those." And it's really weird. They still remember it.
Martin, I really want to get into a special time in my life. Okay, so the Isle of Wight, you were the captain of the Isle of Wight for while I was there for a few seasons, and we've got like 6 minutes left in this second period, so I think we're probably going to overrun because I really do want to get into this special time of my life, and I think for many people, when you say hockey on the Isle of Wight in the early '90s, the mid '90s, it was a really special time. How did you end up there?
Massive. I really don't know. I think I got a phone call from someone. I don't know who it was at the time, and said, "Can you come and play for us?" And I started playing. I don't honestly, Nick, I don't remember. Perhaps a few people were going over there and went, "There's a new rink." So Mike Green, I think it was. I didn't play for the first season it was open, but I played in the second season. I think Mike Green called me up and said, "Hey, can you come along and play?" Blah blah blah. And I joined in, and Gordon was there. I knew a lot of faces.
So you make it to the Isle of Wight, I think, in the second season. After when they were called the Southampton Vikings,
yes,
and they became the Wightlink Raiders, and that's when you made it there.
Yes, that's right.
And Dan Sweeney and Dave Cannon would have been the imports, right?
I did play for the Southampton Vikings for a little bit, so I've got a shirt. Right. I've got a green and yellow shirt with a Viking on it. I think then myself played, Ivor played, a few of us played then, so I kind of just got into the tail end of that before it changed. So, and then Dan turned up, right?
Yeah, Dan and Dave Cannon.
Change. Oh, Dave Cannon, of course, yeah.
And
Unbelievable.
It was
What you can't describe about that is not just the players, but the total and utter love of the spectators. I've never felt so much pride and so much passion from the stands, more than any other rink, but not more than the changing room, not more from the players. But I think it radiated in and out. It was kind of a two-way street. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was just a smaller ice pad. 1,000. It wasn't meant to be 1,000, but they'd pack 1,000 people in there around you, and it was just there was the mesh, and they were right there, and it was like the energy of it. It was such a special time. I think because the island felt so grateful that there was something there, and then because of the physicality of the game, the fact that we were a winning team, there's just the pride just oozed out of that building.
You just couldn't believe it. You just couldn't believe it, but it brought everyone up. So the supporters loved you, so you wanted to do well for the supporters, so you did well for the supporters. I might have been crazy legs, and I might have skated a bit weird, but it was kind of like a lot of supporters looked at me and thought, this normal guy can do this. He's not some handsome Nick Rothwell. He's not some Canadian, or he's not some. It's just this normal guy can do this. So a lot of them flooded to me. Steve Porter, he sponsored me. He said, "Martin, do you want a stick? Do you want this? Do you want that?" Every time we'd win a game, I'd go up to the bar, and there'd be a pint at the bar for me from Steve Porter. Now, how did I know it was my pint? Because I started smoking cigars when we won a game. So there'd be a cigar across the top of it, and you could smoke in the bar, cigar afterwards, have a pint.
I remember that, yeah.
We used to have to rush off to get the ferry, which was always frustrating. So I didn't have the normal wind down. It was like, right, in the bar, drink, chat, right, got to go. And I'm Mr. Always last at the party and don't want to miss anything. And I can't do that there because of the ferry to catch. But I kind of thought that made us a little bit more special looking back on it, because then we were perhaps as integrated, or not quite, perhaps a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word is. but perhaps a little bit aloof because they couldn't. Um, yeah,
Well,
we
there
weren't.
was only three guys I think probably that lived on the island. The rest
Yeah,
of the team lived in Southampton or Bournemouth or
yeah,
even London. Like Stewie McIntosh made his way down. But Martin, I think that we ended like 2 seasons without losing a game, even
yeah,
exhibition games. We won
yeah,
the league, we won the cups, we won our exhibition games, we won exhibition games against teams in the in the league above us. We really pissed a lot of people off because it was so hard to come down and play on the island, and we had a winning mentality. We knew we were going to win no matter what, and there was hard games in there. I remember even you and me having a tussle in a practice before playoffs because we were so
yeah,
like the like I mean, and that's like the highest level of hockey, intensity that I ever known. Even though maybe I played in a league above it, and we played in leagues above it. There was just so much intensity and want to win.
yeah.
I really
Passion,
remember that.
passion.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
passion was on the training. The passion was in the rink. On the game, and it was like because it was unheard of that we'd lose. It was then very difficult to contemplate losing. So to then contemplate losing, you couldn't even think losing because if you thought losing, it might happen. You did. It wasn't a word that we knew, but then the supporters knew that. But then we knew that, and we knew we had to perform. And I fell out with you. You fell out with me. I fell out with Dan occasionally. I did some crazy things, and I sort of wind you guys up like you wouldn't believe. But then that was my training as well because that was what my job was, and that's what I had to do. And I had to bitch at the ref, and I had to ask the ref what all the calls were, and I had to get involved in it all. But I also had to slow the game down by doing that because sometimes it was running away from us, and I'd then ask the ref more information than I needed to know, just so then I could slowly report that back to the bench, so that it just calmed things down a bit.
Yeah.
I probably didn't know I was doing that at the time. It just happened, and it was just something that I did, but it kind of worked, right?
You were a good leader, Martin. I want to put like right hand on heart. You were a good leader, and you played elbows high, stick high, rough. Like no one liked playing against you because it was just like so. You had a presence on the ice. You were a huge asset to us. First and foremost, though, you were a great leader. I want you to always remember that. Like you led guys right into the firing line all the time, and we were so proud to go into a game knowing that you are our captain. That's hand on heart, brother.
Well, thank you, mate.
Um,
Emotional for
and
that. Thank you. Because from my perception, looking at you and where you were in life and how good you were and who you were hanging around with, you were like a different echelon to me. It was like you were up there, but I kind of was that man who looked after all the groups and made sure everyone was coming together. I didn't have the great ability. I wasn't the best player in the world, but understanding, and this has brought me into. We'll do this in the third period, but this has brought me into my my life now and my work career life is reading people and understanding what people need. One guy said to me, "You've got two of these and one of these. Use them in that proportion. Listen twice as much as you talk." Understand that Stuart McIntosh needs that. He just needs an arm around his shoulder to tell him he's brilliant. Dan doesn't need any of that. He just needs to go, just get out and do your job. Nick needs a little bit of Nick, you're amazing. Can't believe how good you are with that puck. How did you score that goal? Because then he feels proud about himself. But it's then reading those players and the Matt painters, just saying, Matt, come on, scuff it along the boards. You know you can do it. You're going to get it off there. You know you're going to do it. You can do that. That's your game. And kind of just knowing what everyone needed is, I don't know. I think it's a
yeah,
skill in its own without
a gift.
going out my own arse.
It's a gift, brother. It's a gift. Um, I want to just kind of wrap things up with what was your highlight? What was your highlight in your career playing, professional, semi-professional hockey? When we'll get into the third period about life after hockey. But what was the highlight that you can
Well,
remember?
it's really weird because I played Premier League once we got out of the league in with the Vikings. We went right up to Scotland and played all those games and lost lots of games, 32-2. And I really enjoyed those times. Big travelling, double headers away, coming back after the weekend. Those times were fun. I've got to say, I think though, and I haven't really thought about this because you just threw this at me. I'd say lifting the cup in the Isle of Wight for the first time with the long hair and the moustache and I think the camaraderie and the team that we had then, that first season, I don't think could be replaced. Yeah, there might have been different people that came in and out after that, and it changed slightly. I think we were all muckers and all hard workers in that first season, and lifting that cup then, looking back at you guys as I'm lifting it up, going, I don't really deserve to do this. You all deserve to do this. We should all be up here. I've got the C on my chest and I'm lifting the cup, but I didn't do this. You guys did this, So, but it was kind of like so. But that was very proud, and that was a great moment.
It was beautiful. I remember it, and I'll say, Ben, you can look on my Facebook page, and there's a picture. It's black and white of that team. Martin, it was special time in my life. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for being a great captain. And that's going to wrap up
Part of it as well, Nick.
What's that, buddy?
Thank you for being part of it as well. It wouldn't have happened without you. We all needed it together.
Yeah, and that's a good way to wrap up the second period. And we're going to head into the third period, and it's one of these periods that over the last couple of episodes, it is what it is, Martin. We're actually quite involved in each other's lives now after 30 odd years and seeing each other at a charity game. We're actually really now deeply involved in each other's lives at a very personal level. And let's talk about.
I didn't know anything about what happened to you in your life. It's kind of like, the Basingstoke, we met one another. I said, do you want a beer? You went, do that. What? And that was a great way to meet, and that was a great way to interact again. I remember it. And then you rang Dan up.
Yeah, we talked to Dan.
Dan didn't know who it was.
Dan's getting old. I'm going to send him the link.
I think I got fat and grey and bald.
He didn't notice you. He didn't recognize you. You did have a mustache. So, yeah.
Karen was running around trying to put her clothes on.
Life after hockey. Brett, I don't care who you are, what sport you play. When you end up hanging up your boots or your skates or whatever it is, there's a transition, there's a time. And for most people, it's just something that you don't really pay a lot of attention to. There's some feelings, and you get on with your life. And for me, again, talking to a lot of guys, there's a lot of challenges that go with it. How did you end your hockey career? And let's say, when was your last game? How did you end it all?
Difficult to say. My last proper game was probably on the Isle of Wight, and it was a sad time, really. And it was and I didn't know it was going to be my last game. And it was kind of, I turned up for the next season, ready to go on, a bit blinking about me and my life. And they were talking about the ice rink moving from where it was in Ryde to somewhere else. They were sort of saying, it's going to move, we're going to do this. So we all went over the summer when Dan wasn't there to a council meeting. Lots of players turned up because they wanted us to turn up. And I went in as the captain and kind of went, and there was a new rink manager, a young lad, who thought he was, I can't remember his name, thought he was all that in a bag of chips. He really did. But he was like, I'm going to be skating, I'm going to be doing this. I've played all sorts of sports. I can play hockey. Yeah, wake up and smell the coffee. Bit arrogant, big arrogant. And I'd said to in the council meeting, I said, question, what's the story about us getting off the ferry and getting up to the new rink? Will you put buses, or how would you expect us to do that? And the answer came back like a politician. I don't know what they said, but they didn't really answer. I'm straight talking. I asked you a straight question. Yeah, we'll sort that out. We get buses for you, or they're taxis, or you have to get push bikes. They did a proper politician's answer of saying nothing, saying lots of words, but nothing. So they didn't really answer my question. I'm like, perhaps that was the worst thing I should have said. But then the council didn't like me. Then the ice rink manager, as I walked out of the meeting, went, "Oh, that was brave of you, wasn't it?" I'm like, "What did I do? I just asked the question. I was quite." Next season, I turn up to see Dan, discuss money, discuss where I'm going to be in the position and things. And he's like, Martin, we can't offer you anything. I'm like, what? He said, we literally can't offer you anything. We can't offer you a place here. Like, what, you can't afford me? What, have you given all the money away? What's going on? He said, no. He said, just can't play anymore. It's not for you anymore. Damn, what's going on? And he was eventually broke down and went, look, Martin, I've got to tell you, this is what happened. The council meeting that you obviously said, he said, I've sort of tried to stick up for you and say, you must have been saying this for your teammates or something. I said, I don't really know what I said then. I just sort of said, that was all I said. I said, that's all I'm, and that was it. I was like, walked out of that office, picked up my gear, and they went, where are you going? Like, everyone was a bit like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm not playing anymore, boys. They're like, you're joking, aren't you? And it all changed just like that. Just like that. Just walked away from it. Wasn't a head injury. It wasn't something that I was expecting. Perhaps it was the right time anyway. Don't know. Perhaps it was the best time to bow out. Who knows? That was my first. That was kind of when hockey finished for me as semi-professional, shall we call it? You know, getting a bit of expenses for it. That was for me. Over. Boom, like that. Shocked. Did you know that?
I didn't know it. I didn't know that. And it's like, honestly, my heart hurts because I just know everything. Like, I can just imagine. Like, I never knew my last game was going to be my last game. I fizzled out in a quite a sad way as well. And I think it's really sucks. It fucking sucks when you put your heart and your soul into something. And I love guys getting their testimonial years, and I love guys getting their retirement years, and if they're hanging a jersey or if they're doing something like retiring a number, whatever it is, I love it. I love it. But it never happened for me, and it never happened for you. And
Yeah.
and I'm not sad. I'm 53, but I am. I want to say I'm sad, but it's fucking sucks. And I just
It's not what you've given a lot to it without realizing you've given a lot to it. You've got a lot back from it, so you don't feel like you're giving, but you are giving when you look back at it. And it's kind of like you just think, well, that was such an abrupt end. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
and I do feel sad still to this day about it because
Yeah.
it kind of. I went back to Steve Ganaway's memorial testimonial, went back to Tony Blaze's testimonial, and I played, and everyone was like, I can't believe you're still a good player. Why did you leave? And it's like, it is what it is. Yeah, things move on. There's no point in crying over spilt milk. But it's kind of like, for me, it was a sad ending.
Yeah.
Even if they'd sort of said, look, Martin's, let's let you go. You're injured, whatever it is. You've got bad knees. Let's tell them something and let's have a game for you. Didn't do any of that. Just gone like that. But then obviously I still then the Gosport played at a rec team. I went down there eventually and played a few years later after. Bear in mind, through all of this, Nick, I've always lived in Southampton and I've always had what I do work-wise. So there's been Ivor Ambridge and his dad used to work at Aerostructures. I was working in the family business and I got it was my dad's dream, not my dream, to sell fruit and veg and to I, from a young age, and perhaps you should have done this in the first period, my dad wouldn't buy a forklift truck, but he was buying 10 ton of potatoes every 2 weeks. Me and my two brothers were lifting 400 bags of potatoes off the lorry and walking it from one end of the ice rink to another end of the ice rink on our shoulder and then loading it up and then going backwards and forwards. They'd turn the lorry around and we get them on our shoulder and do the other. We were lifting every couple of weeks. We were in the gym, not knowing it. So I could do press ups like you wouldn't know. I'd never been to a gym and I've never been to a gym, but I'm as strong as an ox from those times. But it wasn't for me. He didn't want to invest, and rightly so. Ivor said, I'll get you a job in the factory. I left and worked on a building site for a while. And then Ivor said, I'll get you a job in the factory. I worked in the factory and did all that process operating and did all that. Then went in the paint shop, learned to paint, did all that. And I've done that the whole of my life. So I just literally went back into throwing myself back into work rather than having this evening weekends of what I do. By then I had a young family. Azaria was how old was Azaria? 95. So yeah, Azaria was, I don't know, 4 or 5. Kia was just coming along. So they were all, I had a young family. I had enough to do myself. So it just naturally happened.
Like when I talk, when I go through my, like, again, I'd say it naturally happened for me. Like, my last game was my last game, and then I had a business, a young business. I had my Sky TV. I was still involved with the game, even though now I reflect on it, and I really struggled with, like, the fact that I wasn't a hockey player anymore. Even though I didn't play in the top league, I played for Guildford a few games, and I was still known. My girlfriend loved the fact that I was a hockey player. At Sky, they still liked the fact that I played a bit of hockey, and there was a chance I might show up on TV with a black eye from a hockey game or something like that. So it was still part, and then all of a sudden it
Yeah.
wasn't, and I didn't know it at the time, but there was this little hole inside of me appeared, and
Yeah,
I I recognize it now. But did you recognize, like, a feeling of you, like, where there was, like, this, like, a loss or a lack of something?
I think I think I throw myself into everything I do, and 100%. So when I didn't have hockey, I had to find something else, and I had to find something else quickly. And that became working on cars, or that became being more of a father, being more of a dad at home, and having the weekends where we could go to the zoo, we could do stuff because he he's not playing hockey. Um, it kind of became it, because over the summer season, that's what it was like. It just became an extended version of the summer season. I then threw, and it just, yeah, it's really, really weird. It's difficult to describe. It, you don't know you're missing it because you throw yourself into something else, but then very quickly, as soon as you do the hockey again, you go, holy shit, I really miss this. And it's really difficult. And even now, living in Houston, I've found a team, and for the first probably, I don't know, perhaps first year my kit wasn't here. Perhaps first 6 months kit wasn't here. Then I had things to do and work to do, and I didn't find a team, and I was a bit nervous about going to a team with my plastic skates and being introduced to these Americans and Canadians. I've now got into a team over here, and I thought, shit, a Thursday night for me, I cannot miss Thursday night, because for me now, that's like that's it's my adrenaline junkie type brain. I need that. There's no one else over here. My wife's here, her daughter's here, I'm here. It's kind of, my kids aren't here. They're doing their own thing. They're at university and they're doing what they're doing. I kind of I need something separate from her, but I didn't realize how bad I missed and needed the hockey. So to go back with it was retrospectively looking at that hole that you had. I had it, but I didn't notice it as bad as some players, because I did have a young family, and because I did have a permanent job that was, I wasn't a full time hockey player where, shit, I lost my hockey, lost my job, and I haven't got a family, I've just got a girlfriend. No, I had kids and I had other stuff. So I don't think, I think because I had, and because I always lived in Southampton, so I still have my brothers and sisters. I think, I think my transition was slightly different to other people. So I don't think it was as harsh.
You mentioned, though, that you threw yourself into stuff, and this is why I always love Facebook, because I do remember you getting a boat. Now, people talk about, like, I say I had that hole at the time. I was filling it with a drink, and you wouldn't say I was drinking alcoholically, but it certainly did fill that hole, or at least took a little bit of a respite, from like an unrecognized disconnection or pain or anything like that. But I remember you getting a boat, and it was more or less like just a shell, or at least you had to make it into a shell and completely
Yeah.
rebuild it. Is this something that you would do to occupy, to escape, to
Something
not
I do
think
all
about it?
the time. I've now bought a van over here, which is a little dodgy van, which I'm doing up to be a camper van, putting air conditioning in it, building it completely so that I can then go and see the rest of America, and just take the dog with me and just go and do that. And I do. I've still got the boat, and literally the boat was a shithole. It's now an 85, but still an 85-foot boat, fiberglass, 7 bedrooms. It's in Southampton. It goes up and down twice a day, and it's kind of there doing what it does. But yeah, I think I've always had that in me, which sometimes has been to my detriment, because I think I could have been a better hockey player if I just said, I'm always going to just play hockey. I want to play hockey. I want to get better. I want to get better. I want to do this. I want to do that. Once I walked off the ice rink and I had a young family, or I had the house to build or decorate, I then had to concentrate on that. Or we needed a second car, so I had to build a second car. And I mean, literally a Morris Minor that needed re-welding. I learned to weld, needed engineering, needed re-engine build. I then had to focus on that. So when on Saturdays, or on the week, on Tuesdays and Thursday nights when it was training, I then had to pull myself away from that and then put my hockey head on and do that, rather than always having a hockey head on. So I kind of didn't have I always had that. I always had that in the past. I always had that from playing with you guys. I kind of always had that other stuff going on. If I hadn't had that going on, I think I would have been a better player. But if I had been a better player and didn't have that going on, I think that would have been worse for me in this time of my life. Does that make sense?
Totally does. It's
Yeah.
kind of this idea of, but also like it's this thing of like you can't, like I sometimes have a hard time focusing on just one thing. And some people say, "Oh, Nick, you might be a jack of all trades." I think I could have been a better hockey player if I would have just been able to focus on one thing. But I was focusing on university, or I was focusing on a career after hockey. So I completely understand. But also, like you said something earlier, and I have this thing now where I am, where it's like I think inside of us there's like a special skill, And I know you're really good at building stuff and focusing on things and hard work. But there was also something you mentioned earlier on, which was your ability to move around a group of people and understand and almost morph yourself and feel like an empathy of being able to understand how to, once that's gone, and you're literally like a boat's not going to ask you, or you're not going to be able to ask a boat how it's feeling unless you did. But like, what was that? What was it like to miss that I suppose you fulfilling your purpose as a leader, as a captain, to go around and to check in on people?
So that's where it changed slightly. I got headhunted by a company because I was working in aerostructures. I'd learned to paint. I knew surface treatments, and this means nothing to you. It's very technical. Aluminium alloy, paint doesn't stick to it. You've put surface treatments on it, then paint sticks to it. So I've learned all of that. Learned hardness checking, conductivity. I've learned all sorts of stuff about the aircraft industry. So this paint distributor wanted me as a technical guy to talk to people. So my changing room ability and my skills for reading people changed from the changing room to a group of painters in Wrexham, where I'd be doing some work, Airbus up there, or Magellan Wrexham, or whatever it was, to Gardner in Derby, to wherever I was working. I'd have a group of painters that I'd be talking to and training. Reading those painters was like being in a changing room. Reading which one was taking the piss, which one was a good trope, which one was a good painter, which one was shy and which one was nervous about painting, which one didn't want to try this new paint, which one had no idea about what they were doing, which one was old in the tooth and just literally just was swinging the lead and waiting. I had to read all that. I then did that. I then had to do that in foreign countries. I had to do that in India. I had to do that in Poland. I had to do it in France. And then I did training for those people. So what I learned in the changing room, I transitioned to using those skills in work. So I still had that. And I've said to you, but you know this, and I'll announce it. I'm pretty dyslexic. So I've got my microphone here to talk into my computer to write for me. I then have a program that reads it back to me. I don't do any reading or writing myself. But that means, I think, because of that, almost like a deaf person can see better and a blind person can hear better. Because of that, I have those innate skills that say I can see everything that's going on and I can read people quickly. And we spoke about it the other day. We spoke about our gut feeling and how feels right, then do it. My kids phone me up and say, I'm not sure about this, Dad. What do you think? I'm like, how does it feel down here? What does it feel in your gut? How does it really feel? Oh, it doesn't feel like I should do it. Then don't do it. Oh, I feel, no, it feels all right. Then do it. Follow that. And kind of like we've spoken about this a couple of days ago. And I really believe in that. But I believe in, even in foreign languages, I could read that the painters are giggling about me in Poland. And I'm like, what's going on, guys? And the translator's laughing. I'm like, no, what's happening? Said, oh, don't worry, they're just having a joke. No, I want to know what the joke is because you're my translator. This guy said to you, he said, if you think you can do it, why don't you do it yourself? I'm like, tell that guy to get me some overalls and a mask. Let's get on. And I picked up the paint gun, I mixed the paint, did what, sprayed the part, went, smoke, go for a smoke, 10 minutes, smoke, come back, we put another coat. I did this paint part, really difficult part, really intricate part, and I did it really well. And then all of those guys turned on him and went, you idiot, see, you can do it. Now, I've just won all those guys over, right? Every time I go to Poland, they see me go, Miss Jeneway, good painter, he's good painter. And like, I've won them over, right? By doing that. But that guy then shakes my hand, puts my arm around me, and he's kind of like, we got to go for a drink. I like you, Mr. Jeneway. That has come from that changing room. That has come from that dyslexia. That has come from understanding my industry and understanding what I do. But how have I got all that? I've got all that from what hockey gave me in the first place, I think, because you need to read a player in your team, but also the player on the other team who you stop at the blue line and take the puck off him and just give him a bit of an elbow. He ain't going to come past you again. He's not going to come past you again. He's not ever going to make that same move again. So then he sees you and he thinks, by that time, Nick's chased up to him and taken the puck off him because he's thought too long about what.
But if your side of the ice, you remember me. I never went south of my red line.
No, you get a nosebleed if you went.
Yeah. I never went into our zone. I never even went into their zone. I just was a neutral zone guy and just a high slot. That was it. Let Dan and Ivor skate everywhere.
I got down that left wing, yeah.
Oh man, it was awesome to play with those guys. You mentioned you're in Houston now. How did you end up in the United States of America in the Lone Star State?
Have we got this long? How long have I got left?
You've got 2 minutes.
Can't do it. Love, I guess. Love. Okay, so I'm in aerostructures. I'm working with Ivor. I'm running the paint shop. I have contractors come in and do paint parts. I go to this guy, go and paint that bit, go and paint that bit, go and paint that bit. This guy comes to me and said, right, go and paint that bit. He goes, fine, can I have a word? I can't actually paint. I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't paint. You come in as a painter, you're a contractor. Yeah, I know. I had to get out of Middlesbrough. I was going to become a drug dealer. I was going to become something dodgy. I had to get out, but I needed to be doing something. I said, okay, go and do some masking with the girls. Go and do whatever you do. Sorry, girls. With the team. So he went off and did that and kept badgering me about skating, about painting and painting and painting. And I went, okay, Eric, teach him how to do some painting. He's really annoying me. He became quite a good painter. Lost sight of him for 20 years. He went, did his own thing. I'm up at I've then changed company. I've been headhunted. I'm working for this other company. And they invite me up to the cricket to watch a cricket at Manchester. They fly me up there. I'm selling millions of pounds worth of their paint. And I talk to this guy and we're talking. I go, I recognise you. Don't know where I recognise you from. Where do you know each other? Don't know. 6 weeks later, he phones me up and said, Martin, you taught me how to paint. I'm like, Steve, what are you talking about? He said, I work for Aerostructures. You remember we met at the cricket? Oh, yeah. I worked at Aerostructures 20 years ago and you taught me how to paint. I'm like, oh, so I didn't know you're the guy from Middlesbrough. Yes, I am. Oh my God. So what are you doing now, Steve? He said, I'm a multi-millionaire. I own 3 paint hangars. I paint full aircraft in Derby, over here, there. He said, I've got one in Bournemouth. He said, if ever I can buy your material, I'm buying your material. And to this day, he still does. So that was a year later, phone call. Hello, Steve. What's up? You still any problems? No problems. No. I'm going to Vegas for my birthday, for my 40th. You're coming with me. I said, no, Steve, I can't afford to do that. He said, no. All paid for. My mates are coming. I class you as one of my mates. You gave me my first break. You're coming with me. He said, get hold of this girl called Karen, get an Esther. I'd never been to America. So this, are you sure? He said, yeah, bit of spending money, that's all you need. Give Karen my passport. She sorts Esther out. Over we fly to Virgin, over to Vegas. We're in Vegas on his birthday. Go out for a meal. Go back to the bar. And I'm sat at the bar. And go, guys, what do you want to drink? I said, oh, waitress be over in a minute. I said, no. Have you seen those two blondes at the bar? I'm going to put my best English accent on. Tomorrow, I've been married to her for 5 years.
Beautiful.
That was 10 years ago. So Steve now is 50. Every year I phone him on his, or text him on his birthday. I say, is it your birthday today, Steve? He says, yes, Martin, it's your anniversary. This is the day you met. So every year I do that, just a bit of fun thing. We still talk in between it, but I'm over here for love. And I met her through doing a kindness to someone probably 40 years ago now. That's
Beautiful.
the story.
What a way to end the third period, Martin, for a guy who, has found purpose and gained all of these skills in hockey and transferred them into a life now that I'm very proud to call you my friend. I'm very proud to call you my captain still, and also a member of the Stick Together OG tribe, where we meet every week and do some awesome stuff. And you're a great guy, dude. And that's the end of the third period. But we are going to go into an overtime frame.
Thank you. I say the same of you, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like you all of your life. But
no, you know what? And I knew that. And this is the overtime bit, is that how, geez, like I might get emotional here, but how you said like you felt like on the island and you felt like as a captain, like you said, oddball, and that you didn't feel like you belonged to one group.
Yeah.
So you kind of went around. I didn't feel like I belonged to any group, buddy. I lived in that.
My mum would say, oh, to have the eyes to see ourselves as others see us. Really interesting. So what's other people's perception of you? See, my perception of you, have we gone into the third period, or have we gone into
we're into overtime now.
Okay, so let's be very frank with one another. My perception of you when I first met you in the gospel changing room was that you knew me and I didn't know you at all. And I was like, you've got a Canadian accent. Oh, he's quite a good hockey player. But he's kind of like, you had an arrogance about you. And it was kind of, but because I can read between the lines, the arrogance for me was an insecurity. Okay, and tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong, but I might have been wrong, but that might have been my own insecurity, making me secure about who you were, because I was saying he's not arrogant, he's insecure. That kind of, you had that little bit of standoffishness and I'm better than, and I felt like you were in the knew all that was going on with the Dan Sweeneys, knew what was going on with that kind of group, that you knew what was going on around the island. You did the Isle of Wight radio once, and I said, I remember what first interview I'd ever done. I was like, there's 2 points that I think about, and it's this, and this. You went, Martin, that's 3 points. I'm like, yeah, thanks, Nick. I'm on live radio, but thanks for pointing that out to everyone. But kind of that sort of stuff, you would be happy to put someone else down to bring yourself up. And I can say that. I can say that frankly and honestly. That's not you now. But that's kind of.
But even then, like I say, like the whole thing is that what I want to try people to understand is that sometimes guys come into changing rooms, and I was hugely, like, I could talk and I could charm my way into things and stuff, but really inside of me, and this now, was a scared kid, and I was still 18 or 19 years old. I was a kid, but I was scared of not being accepted, of failure, of being judged, and I protected myself by being able to smile or be a bit cheeky or manipulative or a bullshitter, right? And I think a BSer, a bullshitter would have been a good thing that went after my name. Nick is a bullshitter,
Yeah, you say that, but I would say that probably if 80% of that team were that, and 80% of the population at that age were that. You know, you looked at the Mark Wallaces, who was so fucking arrogant, but so insecure, all at the same time. But you could see, but no one could see the insecurity because he was so bullshit about what he was doing. And we were that young, and we were all going into that changing room, and we were all putting on a veneer, a front of who we were. But that wasn't the true person of who we were. None of it was. You weren't Mr. Obnoxious and Mr. I know everything and I'm a good hockey player and I got a Canadian accent. That wasn't the true Nick Rothwell. That was the true Nick Rothwell was, you know, you were married at the time. I think you were going out with someone, Katie, I think her name was.
Katie, yep.
Where did that come from? I don't know where I pulled that from. But you had your
Good
life
job.
outside of that. And you had your,
And that's the thing too, is like, with like, I never like everyone thought that me and Dan were like best friend buddies and stuff like that. But I would go over to his house once a month. You know, he was more tight with Ivor. Um, and I just stayed out of everybody's way, really. Like after the game, I wouldn't even go for a beer. I'd go for maybe a half an orange juice and then head home, just because I felt so uncomfortable around people. And even some of the fans to this day would have said, Nick, yeah, you were quite arrogant the way you treated us. You just left after the game. But I just was so uncomfortable, like in my skin. I was just like, I just don't want to be around these people, you know?
It's really funny because what we saw Nick's too good for us. But the truth that inside was that Nick is actually a bit scared about, frightened about, and sometimes you might have needed an arm around your shoulder. They go, "Come on, Nick, let's go to the bar. Come on, you'll be all right. They'll be all right." And you occasionally, when you went over the balcony and it was just us guys and we relaxed a bit, you were one of the boys. You really were one of the boys. But it took a lot to break through your veneer.
Yeah. I think what I'm trying to get to is that even though you said you felt like a bit of an oddball, I felt like a bit of an oddball too. And I just want to recognize to hockey players and guys in the changing room is that sometimes feeling a little bit odd is just part of who we are. And a lot of it comes from fear and insecurities and lack of confidence. And if you find yourself having to embellish a story or be a bullshitter or a charmer or a manipulator, then having a captain that's empathetic and can read, then being able to start those conversations and enable us to feel more part of a team. When even though like we're wearing the same crest, on our chest, but we still feel quite odd. And I just want to acknowledge this in this overtime period is that you and I both admitted to, feeling just a little bit odd within a team, and that's okay.
Absolutely. But the difference with ice hockey and other sport against other sports is I might not like you personally, but when we're in that team spirit together, when we're in that changing room, or when we're in a bar, or when we're on the ice, I go in the corner, I know Nick's got my back. I go to the bar and I'm getting some hassle, I know Nick's got my back. I'm in the changing room, I know Nick's got my back. I'm in the penalty box, I know Nick's got my back. And you knew the same of us. It was unspoken. It was definitely unspoken. So even though we perhaps didn't mesh as friends and we were insecure and we didn't have as much as we thought we had, as we had great camaraderie, but I think there was a lot of separate people there who were all insecure, but there's nothing wrong with being that. And now we're 50, mid-50s, and I'm 60 soon. We can look back and see that. And it's kind of mothers blossom more so when their daughter is when their daughter becomes 15, 16, 17, they look back at their daughter and go, I did that. I don't know what's wrong with them. Why are they thinking like that? And then the woman is 40-ish and then she becomes a proper woman, and then she becomes more confident about herself because she sees a reflection of her daughter, and what she did is exactly what she did at that age, and how they open up after that. Interesting analogy, but
it is, buddy. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on today and giving us this time and sharing your story. knowing that this is for the Stick Together tribe. I know there's going to be a lot of hockey players that will resonate with parts of this, and thank you for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your story, dude, today. Really appreciate it.
But Nick, you've brought me here. Without blowing smoke up your ass, I wouldn't have been this open if we hadn't been having the conversations that we've had over the last 6 months. You've made me a little bit freer about being able to speak about stuff like dyslexia, and it's not alcohol, it's not drugs, and I'm not addicted to anything. But it still helps me in my journey. And we talk about this period might go on a bit longer. I've had some depressing times, and I've had some depression times, and I've had some depression where I think I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, or I'm not performing as well as I should be performing, or I'm letting people down. And sometimes I haven't been able to get out of bed in the morning to face something because I've got a little bit of ADHD, or I've got so much to do that I can't do anything. And that happens. But I class you as a true friend now. I said in the 90s we were colleagues and we were teammates, but I wish we had what we have now then.
Or perhaps we had what we had then so that we can have what we have now.
There you go. Yeah. It's made me a bit emotional, but I thank you.
No, thank you too, brother. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being open and vulnerable. And love you, man. And and you're right in saying that whatever we portray on the outside, sometimes those clouds come. And right now we are building something that helps supports one another, so that when those clouds come, we're all there with our virtual hug, our arms around one another. And I think what we're doing now is needed more than ever, and it's here for people. And you're an OG, dude, and your story is going to help people. And I love you, man. Thanks for joining us today.
No, don't mind you share this. Thanks, Ben, as well. You're quiet in the background.
Yeah, I've stayed quiet through most of them. Actually, I couldn't help myself with that picture. It's I honestly thought you'd gone and got a vinyl record.
What a way to end it, folks. With Ben's set, he thinks it's the '70s cover album of Richard Beaupre, Gary Stephan, Paul Ferguson, and Martin Jeneway, our guest on this episode of Stick Together. Don't forget to join us for another episode. And folks, if anything was stirred up for you in this episode, please reach out to us. We're here to chat. This is what this is all about. It's for you to support network. So let's support each other. Bye for now.
Talk, guys. It really is good to talk. Get it out. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Ben. Love you guys.